Look, I don't know who my audience is, but if the universal algorithm does its job correctly, which I'm assuming it will, I trust that it will, it could be what the world calls autistic. Thinking for yourself? No thanks. Let everyone else decide what you need to think. With that said, then I want to talk about this weird phenomenon, which is the ego might interpret karma as a punishment. And I went through this for oh so long. Hell, in fact, I was so disconnected from, let's call it the spirit or your spirit, that when I first started getting the first intuitive downloads of what I needed to do for my so-called purpose, I hate that word though, let's see, for what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to build like a singing academy, but when the first downloads came, I actually felt I stopped being a slave for the matrix, and now I have to be a slave for this other entity that makes me want, like, it wants me to create a singing academy, and like I'm the messenger, like, and fuck this shit because I hate it and whatever. It's like I was so disconnected from my spirit that I thought my spirit was this other entity which wanted to enslave me by literally giving me the business that actually allows me to be free. But I was so deep in hypnosis and delusion that I actually thought I was becoming a new type, like a new type of slave, because my ego wanted to like continue to masturbate and do stupid shit and drugs and everything just bad. For that, for him or for her, because demons. Okay, I won't get into that. The version of freedom that they consider to be true was that, right? So then the actual thing that you came here to do, your soul or whatever, that's bullshit, you know, they didn't want to do it. So how this connects to karma is like when you do something stupid, like watch porn, and I, not so long ago, like recently, relapsed, and I suffered, like I paid so much like karmic consequence, we could say, and I'm going to elaborate. And it does feel like this narrative arises as like I'm being punished, like I didn't want to relapse. I know that's almost like paradoxical for someone who like never struggled with like addiction. They'd be like, you have to take responsibility. And I do paradoxically, otherwise like how else am I going to stop, right? At the same time, something activated that made me, at least in that moment, maybe from this moment, I'm like, I could manage it. If it arises again, the impulse, I could totally manage it. But in that moment, it was unmanageable. It was like I was possessed again and I couldn't control it, right? Then the consequences, the karmic consequences, might feel like a punishment from, again, an external judging entity. But no, it's not. It's because you came here with your own little software to think for yourself, everything from scratch, not take anything that anyone gives you for granted, and just, you know, just all from scratch. So this karma that feels like a punishment, in fact, is a tool from your own spiritual nature to keep you on track. So if you touch fire or a hot stove as a kid, it burns and you never do it again, right? This world will try to convince you that you can learn anything through language and repetition and studying and, you know, books, whatever, right? But because this is not your particular storyline, then it is also your own soul and spirit ultimately which gives you the karma. For example, I don't resonate with watching porn. You could be saying, well, why the fuck do you watch it then, right? Yeah, exactly, because I was split, which is what demonic possession even is to begin with. If you're unified, you're going to do something that goes against you. Now, we could say, well, the karmic tendency was solidified when you were, you did it for a decade since you're a kid, so it's really hard to get rid of, and you have to hold space for yourself and be compassionate. That is also paradoxically true at the same time, simultaneously. But still, the concept stands that it's not an external entity giving you the karma, but it's just like your own reaction from, like, when you have a sensitive soul, we could say, to doing something that you don't want to do, or that hurts you even, you know? People tend to have compassion maybe for the victim side, maybe let's say, like if something gets done onto you sexually, it's like pretty obvious to have empathy and compassion. But if you don't do something sexually that you don't want to do, like if you get something done onto you that you didn't want sexually, right? Like rape or whatever, then obviously empathy. But it can happen on the other polarity, that you're so possessed by whatever circumstances because something activated from your past lives and like you don't remember, suddenly like there's all this trauma. Maybe in your past life you were a girl, like if you're watching as a man right now, right? Let's just, or whatever, just do the inverse. And then you got abused, right? So when it activates and now you're a man, the tendency could come to like abuse, in a sense, like you don't want to watch porn because you know it's like built on exploitation, but you feel like this urge and you can't control it, apparently so, until you like surrender and ask for help to God or whatever is in your ego, or whatever is oppositional to your ego, right? Some higher power in this sense. You should also hold the same compassion for yourself in that case to the hypothetical girl that you have compassion for, so obviously. But I guess most people won't understand it, and from what I've seen on Instagram, not that I care too much, but to sort of ground myself in reality, they'd be like, you're not a victim, like just don't watch porn. But again, like they don't understand what it's like to be trying with your whole like fucking body. Like, you know, like I've seen some, like it's not to justify, I literally don't give a shit, but to put it somehow, like I have compassion for myself, I don't really need others, right? But like supposedly heroin is kind of comparable to porn addiction, especially sustained long-term porn addiction, since I started as a little kid personally, right? So when you quit cold turkey, which is how I try to overcome it, well, you should never quit heroin cold turkey. I think you just die, right? So I'm not saying you die from porn addiction. It's not as severe, but just to offer like a little bit of how hard it could be. Even if you, with your ego power, you're like, I don't want to do it, I don't want to watch porn again, blah, 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 and you still relapse, definitely hold space for yourself. You'll still get karma, which means if you're sensitive, like spiritual, like consequences, and you'll just feel crazy and psychosis, etc., because it's just a natural reaction to doing something you didn't want to do, right? It makes sense. And at the same time, it is a blessing in disguise because it helps you never want to do it again. And it's not learned, it's not like moral, I don't want to do it because it's built on exploitation, blah, blah, blah. It's not, it just makes you reconnect with that side of you. It's like a poor phrasing. Makes you reconnect with your soul, and you just remember that you don't want to do it, and that's it, you know? It's not like a mental, I learned that I have not to do it because even though I want to, the tendency is bad, blah, blah, blah. This is all mental. Then you can say, well, but if you already, like your soul didn't resonate with it, why'd you do it? Like, why'd you relapse? And this is the sort of question that you have to answer for yourself, because each case is individual. If you never experience any type of trauma to this extent, maybe, for example, you know, people, I personally never dealt with that, but people do cut themselves, right, after trauma, for example, and no one goes to them and they're like, why are you doing something that hurts yourself? You're stupid. I mean, maybe there's some people who do that, but mostly everyone now would be like, shit, like that's sad. Like imagine being so desperate for relief or traumatized in general that you literally resort to hurting yourself. Well, same thing. Like if your soul is sensitive and you find porn to be like something that hurts you ultimately, which is my case, even if it gives you dopamine, like it doesn't matter because it is like cutting yourself or something like that. So it's not that hard to understand, but because it is like sexual taboo or whatever, it's like people throw a layer of religious psychosis onto it and then they get all confused. But when you start seeing it just like desperate coping mechanism for trauma, for example, I mean, listen, this depends on your stage as well. When I was watching porn like 5-7 years ago, it was not a trauma response. It was just an escape and an addiction and a dopamine seeking, okay? With time, I got more refined and I stopped doing it because of that, because that's fucking bullshit. Then I realized, okay, this is built on exploitation. Like at some point I didn't even like fucking know somehow. That's how unconscious I was. So, of course, take everything that I say with a grain of salt. Like, I can't speak one truth that's going to apply to all the cases, right? But in this particular stage that I'm describing, it could just be a trauma response. And the alchemy that you will go through when you get this karmic response and you're like all fucked for months and psychotic and blah. When you go through that, you get something that most people will never get, which is organic change. And it's like, it's not like I have to force myself not to do it anymore, whether it's cutting yourself, watching porn, whatever it is, but it's like organic, I don't want to. Now, how is anyone else going to learn an organic, energetic, silent, doesn't need of language, doesn't need of words, change, an alchemic change, without going through this grind? You think like by studying a book, by like reading arguments on how porn is bad and just memorizing them? Like, I mean, it's a good step in a good direction, obviously, don't get me wrong, but like, it's not going to produce energetic changes to the point, like, imagine you like an ice cream flavor, right? Like, how do you go about trying to convince yourself that you don't like it anymore through hypnosis or whatever? We're talking here of an organic, energetic change that literally produces the alchemy that is sufficient for you to stop liking it genuinely. So, obviously it's going to be rough, but again, the ego can perceive karma as someone else is punishing me. Again, religious psychosis plays a huge role here. So hold space for yourself, because it is just religious psychosis. And in a sense, ultimately, even though it feels so hard, holy shit, it does make you like in the moment, like wanna like, but ultimately it is like your soul just loving you. So I will leave before I start crying. Okay, see you soon.